I thought the worst thing an HOA could do was send me another ridiculous violation letter. Then I came home and found 3 massive trenches cut straight across my road. The HOA president was standing there like she owned the entire neighborhood. She had no idea those trenches were about to create a $2.6 million problem. I walked closer and realized these weren't ordinary road repairs. Someone had dug enormous trenches straight across the road I used every day. When I asked to authorize the work, Karen didn't even hesitate. She said the HOA had every right to do it. I asked her why the road had been torn apart without warning me. She told me the HOA needed to install new infrastructure. I reminded her that this road wasn't simply an HOA playground. She laughed and told me to sign the paperwork or stay out of the way. The excavator started digging deeper while Karen watched proudly. She acted as if the entire road belonged to her HOA. But there was something underneath that road nobody had bothered to investigate. And that mistake was going to become very expensive. By the afternoon, 3 enormous trenches had been carved across the road. Residents were struggling to get their vehicles through the neighborhood. Karen kept insisting the work was completely authorized. I decided it was time to find out exactly what was buried beneath us. I pulled out my original property survey and started comparing the boundaries. The road wasn't exactly where Karen claimed it was. The survey showed several important utility easements beneath the roadway. That changed everything. Karen apparently didn't like being questioned, so she called the sheriff. A deputy arrived expecting to settle what looked like a simple neighborhood dispute. Instead, he found 3 huge trenches and a stack of conflicting property documents. He immediately realized this wasn't going to be simple. The deputy carefully studied my survey, while Karen insisted the HOA paperwork was enough. He asked her a simple question: who owned the utility easement? Karen didn't have an answer. For the first time, I saw uncertainty on her face. The sheriff contacted a utility engineer to determine what the trenches had actually crossed. A few minutes later, Robert Hayes arrived with official utility maps. He looked at the first trench and immediately became serious. Then he asked Karen, who had approved the excavation. Robert checked the first trench against his official utility map. Then he checked the second and third trenches. His expression changed completely. He told us the HOA had crossed infrastructure that wasn't theirs to alter. The engineer explained that the road contained protected utility corridors. Those corridors served more than just the HOA neighborhood. Karen had treated them like private landscaping projects. Now, the utility company was going to demand answers. Robert made one phone call to the regional utility company. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. When he hung up, he looked directly at Karen. He told her someone from the utility company was coming immediately. The utility company arrived with its own inspection crew. They photographed every trench and checked every exposed section. Karen suddenly stopped telling everyone that the project was routine. She realized official investigators were now documenting everything. The technicians discovered multiple infrastructure conflicts. Every trench had been dug without the proper coordination. Robert documented each problem with photographs and measurements. The evidence was becoming impossible for Karen to explain away. The investigation moved from the road to the utility company's office. They compared the HOA's construction plan against the official utility records. The differences were enormous. Someone had approved work without understanding what was underneath the road. Karen called an emergency HOA board meeting. She tried to convince the board that the project was still under control, but the questions were coming faster than she could answer them. Then the utility company sent its first formal notice. The first utility notice demanded immediate responsibility for the damage. The board members stared at the numbers in disbelief. Karen insisted they could fight the claim, but the amount was already far beyond anything the HOA had budgeted for. I received copies of the utility company's findings. The documents confirmed that the HOA had ordered the excavation. They also showed that the project had never received the proper utility clearance. Now the question was who would pay for the consequences. That night, I went through every document I had. The more I read, the more obvious the HOA's mistake became. They hadn't simply damaged a road. They had interfered with infrastructure serving an entire region. I took everything to an attorney who specialized in property disputes. He studied the survey, the utility maps, and the HOA documents. Then he looked at me and said the evidence was unusually strong. We decided the next step was formal legal action.